Joining me is feminist and writer Jean Hatchet and drag artist Crystal. Thank you both so much for joining me this morning. I guess let's start with setting out of your overall perspectives on this. And Crystal, why do you need to see gender-neutral toilets? What's your view on that?
You know, gender-neutral toilets are a great way to protect a lot of different people, and you know, I think what we're seeing right now is the government using a distraction technique that targets trans people to distract from a flailing government. And I don't think this policy will do anything to protect anyone. There's no evidence that suggests that mixed bathrooms are inherently more unsafe than sex-segregated ones. And meanwhile, there's a lot of compelling evidence that shows that lots of people are made more unsafe by having only sex-segregated toilets. And I'm thinking about people like trans teenagers, but I'm also thinking about you know, cis people who are gender non-conforming, who don't necessarily pass as the gender that they were assigned at birth. And you know, these are the people who are going to suffer when we start really policing people's sex before they go to the toilet.
Jean, what's your view?
Well, basically, you know, this term gender neutral, it means mixed sex. And, you know, you're using those two terms interchangeably. Women were once placed upon a urinary leash. It was only in the late 1800s that women could actually go out at length from their own homes. And we had to fight for those spaces. And they were only offered those because of the need for women to spend more money. So it's never been that women get what they ask for. We have to fight for it. And now we have to defend it. Now, this is about women. It's not about how people choose to identify. It's about the needs of women. And women and men, and you know, I'm using the term there to mean male and female, use toilets differently. And the way that men use toilets, unfortunately, means that women aren't able to use those spaces in the same way. We have to sit on wet toilet seats. This is not acceptable. But that, you know, that disregards the actual safety aspect of, you know, the installation of spy cameras, which can be collected later. This happens. You know, this is the world that women live in, with the threat of predatory males. And I'm not saying that all males are predatory. Clearly, we know that, but some are, and that is at risk to women, of great risk to women, and that's the world we live in. So yes, everybody needs protection, but that shouldn't be at the disadvantage of the protections that women need. You know, that's a basic.
Crystal, I'm interested if there is space, and clearly the law doesn't get into the nuances always of this, for all three options to be provided. Is that enough, or is that still something that doesn't provide the support that you think is needed?
I think that's a fantastic solution. I think basically the focus solely on sex-segregated is a bit of a, you know, it's a false thing to be chasing after. And as I said, there isn't actually any evidence that suggests that mixed bathrooms are more unsafe. Even Kemi Badenoch in this bill, she says this is about protecting the privacy and dignity of women. And, you know, I'm not sure how much more privacy and dignity someone needs than a locked and closed cubicle door. I don't think there's any sex-based right of the privacy of washing your hands away from a man. We live in a world that is non-sex segregated. You know, we sit on trains next to each other. We sit in the theater next to each other. We sit on the tube next to each other. I've just been in Germany, and I went to a mixed co-ed sauna where everyone was nude together, and it was completely a non-issue. If you go to a queer bar in East London, toilets are labeled cubicles or urinals. It's a non-issue. And I'm not trying to say that that's like a utopian space, far from it, but it's very easy once it's done. And I would encourage Jean to come and visit a gay bar in East London and just see how it does work, because what she's worrying about are hypotheticals that aren't really bearing out in the evidence, and which do end up harming more women. You know, I'm thinking about butch lesbians who are going to be policed for entering the women's loos because they don't present as feminine enough. And I think, you know, there are lots of victims here, not just trans people, who are going to be suffering as a result of this kind of bill and this kind of draconian view that we need to police each other by our sex that was assigned at birth. This idea that women need, you know, protection and like a safe space away from the horrors of the real world, I think is actually a very patriarchal view that is a holdover from, you know, Victorian times, where women needed to be kept in glass cages and kept away from everyone else. And, you know, as I say, going to Germany, you see that that's not the case.
I don't think actually Jean's main point was on the safety, to be fair to her, and I also don't fully get the point you're making about butch lesbians. But annoyingly, we are really tight on time, so we've time for Jean's final word on this. And Jean, I guess I'll put the same question, and you can sort of sum things up for you that I said to Crystal, which is, if there is space for all three, presumably that's something you would fully support.
Absolutely, no problem. As long as there was adequate provision for women, and sometimes that's not the case. We have to sacrifice spaces. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding there of a male person. No mention of women who miscarry in toilets, no mention of women who menstruate or those specific needs. It's not all a happy, clappy place where we stand at the sink and we can all, just be really merry about that. There are some things that women do and need toilets for. And yes, sometimes it is just to be with other women who can help them in times of distress. And you've skipped over all the sort of negative times that women have, interestingly. And yes, I've been to gay bars in East London. So, you're assuming things about me that you don't know based on perhaps your perceptions of me. I don't know. But yeah, I think we a third space, I've no issue. People can choose, that's fine, as long as there is not a sacrifice of the provision for women to single-sex space, because we have, some of us have experienced the trauma of male violence that is, at epidemic levels in our society, and women have a trauma response in enclosed spaces to males. That can happen, and it's really visceral. It doesn't have to be an actual threat of violence. It's based on past experience, and we can't change male behaviour. Only men can change that behaviour, but we do have needs based on what society has imposed upon us thus far.
Jean and Crystal, thank you very much both for your time. And clearly, sadly, we haven't solved this dispute, nor was I expecting us to. But it's been great to get both of your perspectives across loud and clear, and perhaps we continue it at another time. Jean Hatchet and Crystal.